What's happening, guys? Hopefully you had a great weekend again. Another Sunday scan. Last week was pretty good. A lot of opportunities. I think last Sunday scan I talked about getting a little loose on one of those days. It was either Friday or I think it was Friday. Then I got a little bit loose. Got a little ahead of myself on a couple trades, but right back in gear last week, and pretty much every single day offered some pretty nice opportunities. I had most of the day off on Friday, but the opportunities were crazy. TNDM from 60 to 53s and then reversed, kind of like an SRPT. Some old database type stuff where it's only a matter of time before they defend themselves, and ended up coming right back. That was good. CLVS, another one, TEVA. We've had a lot of false breakouts, and they end up coming back in and kind of fade off. Then they were about to go out, break out again, fell off. And so we're at that breakout spot again on a lot of these biotechs. So I am cautiously optimistic. If they do end up breaking out, we might have a couple month type rally in biotech land. So there's a lot of big names that are also showing up on scan, as well as some of these other stocks that are in the, I guess, 4, 5, 8, 10 range, where they could easily go 20, 30, 40% moves, just like you saw on CLVS on Friday. So really it's the first, I guess, time for shorts to cover on some of these names. A lot of these things have been beaten down quite a bit. They've really come down. Let's just say they've come down from 25 to 20 to 15 to 10, and then they kind of just melt to 8. And over the last maybe like 2-3 months, they melt another $2 or $3. So obviously they're very high. They're very far off their highs, but for them just to kind of rally and make up that $2 to $3 that they've faded over the last 2 to 3 months, that's a huge move. And that's kind of like what CLVS did, and just kind of made back that entire move in one day. And so with that, obviously gives us some pretty good momentum, and hopefully we'll be able to take advantage of it this week. I am trying to keep my bias out of the picture. A lot of these things take time to develop. I look left on the chart on a lot of these things, so I want to see where the resistance is. It does not mean that the resistance is going to hold every single time, but it gives you a starting point, especially if you wanted to hypothetically short CLVS on Friday. If you just took a quick look at the resistance, you would know that you probably don't want to touch it until 6 or 620s, because if you look left on the chart, you'll see all of that resistance above 6, just above 6, but for the most part 6 to 620 has had quite a few fails. So that would save you from trying to find the top at 5, 520, 550, 570, and so on and so forth. So it's not always about nailing the entry. It's about knowing what's possible, and to be able to try to stay away from getting in on the front side of the move when you might be only a small fraction of the way to where it's headed for the day. With that said, we also had a little bit of a new style of momentum in the market last week. NXTC started it all. Usually you see a low float runner like SES start to fuel things up, and then BIMI, and then, you could probably list off 12 different names that went because of those ones. But those were low float runners. So this past week we had not necessarily low floats. They actually had some pretty decent floats on them, but they did trade thin. Some of them had lockups, some of them recent IPOs, but they all had news, data of some sort, and so NXTC started it all. And I don't think that CNST would have ran in the way that it did if it wasn't for NXTC. And also on Friday, I don't think RAPT, RAPT, would have ran the way it did if it wasn't for the prior two. So you can kind of start to see how they fuel one another. The first one that always starts it is the one you don't want to underestimate, right? But the second one and the third one the more people that are prepared, the more people that are holding, the least chance it has, the less chance it has for actually repeating what just happened. And obviously, the more people with that thought then creates maybe the third, fourth, or fifth one that traps and goes. So point being is that it's a different style of momentum. You should be trying to continually adapt to what is happening in the marketplace. And right now I'm looking at stocks that I potentially might not normally be looking at, just because we have a different style of momentum right now. Which ones are starting to head up towards a breakout spot that are in the maybe 15, 20 range that could easily go to 30 or 35 or 40, like we've seen a couple times now. So I do have a couple of those on watch, and I'm definitely going to be setting price levels so that they remind me. But I'm not looking to nail a home run on a stock and nail it from 20 to 40 or anything like that. That kind of attitude is going to get you in trouble because it's very rare that they all do that. So that's why I was short bias on that CNST more so than NXTC. So I do owe. I did record the tape. I owe some of the members. I said I'd upload some of the tape there, and it's a great one to rewatch. Those particular two names were insane. Normally, it's not something that I would be too crazy aggressive on, but they offered some really, really good opportunities. I'm fortunate I did not see NXTC until it was about 50. I don't know why I wasn't really paying attention. I think I was zoned in on something else, but I had blinders on some other stock, which obviously I try not to have. But in this time, it helped me out probably because I might have been looking for the top on NXTC, and instead I got long at 55 and I added to the winner. And clearly I'm not chasing huge size, but it gave me a clear view of what was going on. It started to come into a squeeze zone based on the price action and things that I saw. I felt pretty confident about taking a chase entry, and obviously a chase entry, you need to be okay with it slamming right back down to where it came from. Basically, if you figure something's starting to break out and it starts to squeeze, if you're going to chase that squeeze, you need to be okay with it slamming right back down to the level that it broke out from. And that is always, how I pick what size I'm going to use in order to chase. Otherwise, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get in serious trouble chasing some of these names without proper risk in check. So because I had that chase entry, it allowed me to add 2 more times before it continued to go into a couple other circuit halts, riding it to about 98. And then I flipped short at about 103 to 105. And that thing faded down to 75. So I posted that chart, and I will post the tape, like I said, under the study group at some point soon. There's some on this computer, and then there's some on the computer at my house. So I got to kind of just merge the couple days worth of data together, and then you can kind of go back and see the real-time calls out before the circuit halts, before they turned down when I got short. So hopefully commentary did help. It's rare that we have these types of situations, but I always try to offer as much as I can real time when it happens, because that kind of situation is my strength. I wish I was a little bit better at some of these other different names that have momentum and scaling in, but when things go wild like this, it turns into almost like the OTC days, being on the opposite side of the trade. Where would you be panicking, waiting for the tape to kind of have that huge exchange of shares, when it should have broken out again, it didn't, and many other things. A lot of people always ask, what do you see? And there's just no one answer. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and it's also subjective, right? So there is no 100%. It's a subjective answer, and the more factors that you can kind of put together, the better your conviction may be. But at one other point with this is I'm always afraid to have too much conviction on outlier trades like that, because that's obviously where you get in trouble. So anyway, also as you're going through the scan tonight, sometimes I try to put in as much information as I can. I'm also curious what helps you guys. So if you guys leave a comment and kind of write your biggest takeaway from scan, sometimes it's something as simple as looking left to anticipate right, or other things that I say that I may not realize that it's like an aha moment for a lot of you guys. But if you leave your biggest takeaway from scan this week, I was either going to do Momo Traders or a month to chat or something like that, but we're going to pick one winner, and we will contact you, or actually I'll contact you and also put it in the video next week. But each week we're going to do something for you guys that are watching these things, giveaway of some sort, and each week I'll figure it out ahead of time. I'm just kind of doing this on the fly today, but at any rate, we will start to do that. So again, leave your biggest takeaway in the comment section of the scan tonight, and make sure you like the video too, and then we will continue to try to come up with different ideas and giveaways and shirts and chat and Momo Traders book, and I don't know, we'll figure it out. But let's get into scan for tomorrow. So CLVS, very steady move. You can kind of see how VWAP plays a role. 9:45, 10 a.m. plus. It's hard to chase this out of the gate, right? You don't know if it's going to hold, and so what I like to see a lot of times is for it to come back to VWAP, consolidate, and hold that trend. And so we got exactly that. It kissed VWAP, and then it continued to go. That was right at 10 a.m. So it actually offered a perfect retest and then confirmation. It's not necessarily just buying into that flush. It's actually buying the dip after the flush when it confirms. So for me, I might dabble into that, but for me, I want to see it kind of rebound, come back, and then confirm that it does want to hold a higher low. So anyway, it started to have a nice little breakout formation there and continued to head up throughout the day. So the biggest key that I looked at when I was thinking about shorting late day, and again, I was gone part of the day on Friday, so whether or not I would have got along, I don't know. I mean, I had been watching this one for a while, but what got me interested in the short, or what got me aware of what my risk may be, was just looking left on this daily. So if you just draw a line across, you look left and you can see that we probably shouldn't get aggressive until it at least tests this prior resistance. It's got nothing in the way until it tests that prior resistance. So I'm going to go through it again later because it's one of the ones that's on scan, but just kind of think about it. We also had FGEN on Friday. So same kind of situation, and I wrote it in the on Twitter. But the first situation, the first thought process that should come to your head when you're wondering where could this go. So when it opens up post halt at 45 and it spikes up, I like that reactive trade into the 48.50 range, because it's got a lot of resistance, not only here, but even back here. So 48.50, 48.50 was really a big level of resistance for me. It doesn't mean that it can't go to 50 or 52 or 55, but there is a good chance that when it breaks through that level, it's going to have a lot of inventory to try to get through first and then start to head higher. So that is why, for those of you guys that are on Twitter, that I posted the chart. That's why I shorted into that move. That's why I shorted over that 48. I think it was actually 47.70s. I wasn't trying to top ticket. I waited for it to, kind of basically confirm that it was going into those 48s, fail, and come back in. So at any rate, really nice opportunity. Came right back into VWAP, got some shorts on the wrong side, squeezed out again. But the thesis for the original trade was looking left on the daily chart. And same thing with FCEL. Again, for those of you guys either that follow on Instagram or Twitter, you guys saw that short above and at 65 cents. Why did I not get involved at 50, 55, 58, 60? It's because you look left. You look left and you'll see that the high was 64, the high right here was 65. So this day right here, and I know it says 63 as the high this day, but if you go back, you can see it was popped through 65 and slammed back down. I got involved after that stuff, after we saw all that inventory kind of come back through at 65. So that's why I shorted at 65 and 65.1 and so on and so forth. And so once again, that's a long explanation as to why 6 to 620, 630s range was at least an interest spot for me to potentially fade against that level on Friday. So that's what I did, and I waited for it to kind of stuff into that breakout and fail, prove itself before I sized into anything. I did dabble a little bit just to kind of get a feeler in there, but I never will use size until I see that confirmation in the tape. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to work, but it is a reason for me to risk, and then it comes down to what my kind of stop management plan is, and usually that's based off of the prior highs. Wherever I just short, if it starts to base out, then I would probably take it off. So like I said, CLVS week open tomorrow. Red to green would be fantastic. I'd like for it to come into these prior support levels in order to get long. I just don't like to chase a 20-30 cent gap. I'd rather have a week open, shake some people out, get some shorts in there, and then rally back and be able to scale in anticipating that red to green. A lot of people wait for that red to green move to act. I'd rather be kind of anticipating it some, sell some around the core, and then kind of re-add if it confirms. Otherwise, if we open into the 610, 620 kind of ramp spot, I would expect it to kind of push, but ultimately fail until it consolidates for a couple days in this range. I think it needs to work through a lot of inventory, and so typically what we see is a couple failed follow through momentum type days, just like this Teva chart. So Teva had a really nice breakout on Thursday, and then all of a sudden it closes relatively weak, right? So the only way you're going to get people that have a lot of size to start to trim down their size is by candles like this. It looked really, really weak, and then the next day it ends up squeezing out. So at this point, with a candle like that on Teva, I'm going to be looking for weak opens, red to green potential. We could easily go into the 10s, 11s, 12s. I mean, we could get a good squeeze going on this thing if the market and the sector continues to stay hot. So I definitely like that one. Week open, and typically I go back to this prior level where it was kind of the prior top, and then I want it to come back and kind of retest that. So technically the prior resistance should become the new support, and if it doesn't, then I don't want to be long. If it does, then I'm happily long with a set risk. ACB is one of those pot names. I'll be watching it with CGC. CGC is also next on scan. So basically these two, this CGC had a fabulous move on Friday. Once again, we talk about that VWAP kind of test, and so you can see here, it's not always smart, obviously, to chase stuff out of the gate. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, right? And so what is a smarter entry? What is a better entry that you could take that would give you a risking spot? So an example of that is this ramp. Let it come back, test that VWAP, and again, maybe I dabble into that flush, but what I want to see is it come back up and then confirm higher lows, and at that point I can risk off of VWAP. And nice little clean move. And again, these comments are in hindsight. I'm looking at it now. But I want you guys to get familiar with this type of setup because that's a perfect ABCD type breakout right there, as well as perfect risk to potential reward. And, you know, again, we saw that CLVS right here, same kind of situation. And the more you see of these things over and over, even if it's after the fact, if you see it on different price ranges, different names, different, you know, types of setups, midday, morning, late day, you're going to start to be able to identify them in real time a lot easier. So again, CGC and AGC, I'll be watching, or excuse me, ACB. I'll be watching together. And if we start to get a nice little breakout here on these pot stocks, then I'm going to be, you know, focused on letting these things kind of work a little bit. As I noted on scan that you'll see, you know, CGC kind of could be like Teva, right? So it could look like an amazing breakout right now, but we might just see it come right back down. So for example, it starts to break out on 22 and then just sits right back down. But I want to continue it to watch the next couple days because, you know, a lot of people took Teva off of watch because this breakout failed. It sat right back down. Guess what? Next day, bam, went right through. So with that said, CGC, I would be thinking that we could have a very similar situation where it breaks out towards 22, it sits back, we take it off radar, we're like, you know, it's still the same old CGC, it's not going to move. And then all of a sudden we look back in 2 days and it's, you know, 23, 24, something like that. So I want to keep those on watch just in case. And again, just like I was talking about some of the features in our room, you can set those price alerts so that you don't need to watch it. So, you know, maybe set the 22, set 22.50, 23, 24. And that way it won't fade off your radar. And if it does, you're going to be alerted when you wanted to remember it. BE was a nice one. This one was from Scan on Thursday night for Friday for the potential breakout. It happened really fast. So, you know, personally, I wasn't there right off the open, so I didn't partake, but nice opportunity regardless. We're coming into some resistance here. So I still think this could go if as long as the sector agrees and whatnot, but I'd be watching week opens. Typically, I go back to look at where it was consolidating. So dips, 490s, 5s, if they start to base and then rally back off, we could kind of push towards these 550s and maybe even get it into the 6s. Maybe a little bit of a gap fill. So this was a short piece this day right here. And with that said, it's been kind of heavily hated since. And any big pops, people might be interested in shorting. And if they are already short, might have a little bit of a squeeze. So for me, week opens, red to green, rips. And otherwise, I'm going to be looking for weakness, 9:45, 10 a.m. plus. FGEN, I went over this a little bit earlier with the concept from Friday and why I was short at this level. And I had posted the chart on Friday, and also I got short into this level here. I waited for them to kind of stuff into the 44.50s and then got involved, and it had a nice little pullback, but it got very illiquid. Like even this move right here, very quick. You know, so if you were on the wrong side of that's a tough move. You know, that's a buck and then $2, and then all of a sudden you look back and you're down $3 a share. So it's a good reminder that you know, anytime you're trading these things, you got to make sure that you're trading within your means, because you got to anticipate higher than average range on these things, especially with news-driven moves. So I don't have a strong bias. You know, I'm not. This is a long or a short, whatever. I just want to be prepared. So the levels that I kind of am interested in is a morning push towards 43. If it fails, look for the backside, and you know, we might get under 40, something like that. And then other than that, if it starts to base, if it bases at these 40-50 levels, you can see, you know, minus this one flush out, they pretty much supported it, 40-50s, 41s. So if that starts to be the new base, then, you know, don't underestimate it. Personally, I'd let it kind of do its thing and then look for that trend join. I wouldn't try to fight this because you could end up, a buck or two on the wrong side pretty quickly. RDFN. This one again is just like that same candle we were talking about with Teva and CLVS, or not potential for CGC, but mainly Teva. But who would keep this on watch the next day after that candle and expect this? And so obviously had a huge gap up, unwound all day, and then all of a sudden comes back and makes that entire day back. So this is one that I would react off open, but more importantly, I think I would probably wait 9:45, 10, and potential trend join. I like the fact that we've got 18 to 20 type range here. We're coming into some big resistance levels. So if we have a weak open and it starts to hold, and we hold over this prior resistance, I mean, we can get another buck and a half, maybe even more. And this might be that big trend reversal on the daily finally that actually holds. So again, some of these things on scan, I'm going to be ready to go off the open tomorrow. Others, I just want to be familiar with the charts. And the concept behind being familiar with the charts is just like that WKHS trade. I continually go through these charts every single day and very familiar with them. And I would not have been able to react as fast as I did. I got long at the 250s. I kind of fidgeted a little bit, and I could have got 230s, 240s, but the news, I had it fast, but I wanted confirmation as to what I saw on the tape. It swiped up, and then all of a sudden it swiped it again. So I was like, there's a buyer here. There's something going on. And then as soon as I confirmed the reason, I kind of looked left and we're barely up on the day. When I bought it at 250 and change, I forget what it was, but we're barely up on the day. It was kind of selling off into the close, and we were barely up on the day, so I didn't feel like it was much of a chase. And then it went into a circuit halt, and I added after that, after it confirmed that they were still buying. But because I had that early entry, I was able to scale in a lot faster than I would have otherwise. And the only reason I did that is because I was familiar with the chart. I knew what it looked like because of situations like RDFN. Whether or not I trade it tomorrow, I don't know, but I'm familiar with what the daily looks like now. So I'm going to be that much more prepared than, had I not seen it at all. PBYI, similar to, a lot of these other bio type names. This was down on earnings and it came all the way back up and then dips, broke out again. We are sitting right at this resistance. Now we may have a nice little gap fill back up towards that 10 level. So it's been pretty steadily down since. And, a lot of times we see a lot of gap fills happen and then sit back. So I'd be watching for it to consolidate for a few days and then potentially break out from there. MAXR, so far so good. This one was an idea on Twitter around 9. It reminded me a lot of LCI, where LCI just failed. All these times, every time it broke out, failed, and then all of a sudden it busted through that prior resistance and took off. And MAXR looks a lot alike. And so I'm thinking that we could still have a nice little breakout, maybe a couple more bucks, but again, obviously it's a few more bucks higher than I said that. But notice the wicks. We talk a lot about wicks. Week opens, get bought up. You can see every week open was bought up. So right here, week open, bought up, or at least, not necessarily week open, but at least some point during the day it was red, and then they supported it back up. So that's what I look for when these types of situations happen. I get interested on dips. So I don't want to buy the breakout. The breakout's probably a sell most of the time. And then, my edge, I think, is on weakness that starts to curl, hold a higher low, and then go. SPPI, another one in the sector. PBYI, CLVS, all these different types of bio type names. Nice setup coming into some resistance, but I want to watch this. If it starts to base at 850s, you can see we've got a little bit of resistance over here, which we tested on Friday. And then if we start to base there, we could open up and have a really big move. So another nice looking chart that I want to see, VKTX, same thing. Again, doesn't mean I'm going to trade them tomorrow, but these are the types of setups that I want to be familiar with. I can set targets, I can set price alerts, whatever. If it reaches X, I'm interested, things like that. So again, nice little swipe up. And so basically on a situation like this, I'd be looking, see how it traded. 770s is a quick number. So week opens versus 770s, anticipating probably 850 breakout. DTIL, this one, DTIL. Michelle, Offshore Hunter, she does the swing room. She is awesome with finding just some incredible charts. And anytime our ideas kind of jive together, they're usually pretty good. So she had sent me this one under 7 that she liked it. I think she put it on her ledger. And it was a beautiful breakout. So I want to look, and ideally we continue to go and maybe test this prior resistance here. But I want to stay familiar with this. Not necessarily for a breakout. It has been working. You can see dips getting bought up, getting bought up again. But I'm going to be looking for the backside eventually. So I'm staying familiar. Wrapped. Not much history. Obviously, you guys know what happened on Friday. And again, I don't think this would have happened without NXTC or CNST. But staying familiar. If there's a move off the open, I'll probably react to it. Otherwise, I think Russell on Twitter, one of the guys that comes to Traders for a Cause every year. He's in the room, but he's like, you got to trade by appointment on this thing, and he's right. I mean, if you trade too much on this and you get on the wrong side, good luck. It's there's not a lot of volume here, so there's a good chance that I don't trade it at all. But I just want to keep an eye on it just in case we have that, $5 type move where I can take advantage and have a little bit of edge. CNST, again, another one that's consolidating. I wrote on Scan, this one's a little bit different than some of the other ones. This one actually had a lot of like 40, 45, 50 type, I think 50. But mostly I think mid to high 40 price targets by, a bunch of firms versus all the other ones that don't really have any comments surrounding them at all. So this was up on news. If people are too heavily short based on the move itself, then we have potential that we can squeeze out 35.40. If all these point targets that have come out has brought retail in, and which I'm leaning towards that side because every time they come out, you see more and more buyers. If that's the case, then I could see this kind of pulling back towards 25. So 30 is going to be that kind of level where, if it starts to base, I'll use that as a guide probably for my risk. If it starts to peak, I'll use that as a guide for my risk on the short side. VIE, nothing crazy, but I'm watching it. Here's why, daily chart. So to me, based on the market that we're in, NXTC, CNST, Wrapped, this could be the next one that people chase up. And maybe it goes 5 to 7 to 10, who knows. But if they do, I want to either be prepared to join that. Again, not size. It would be like a chase, if anything. Or if they do, and it does rip, I want to be able to short it. So keeping an eye on that. TDC, nice daily chart. This one came back pretty nicely. After the day that it just kind of unwound. It pretty much did all the pullback, on not that much volume, and since then it's had a buyer. So we've seen this a lot, just like PBYI, just like MTCH, a lot of these lately where they gap down and then they just, come right back up. So big levels for me. If it were to gap up and run into 26, I'd be interested in the short. But if it starts to base at 25.50s, 25.60s and starts to grind, I wouldn't mind joining that. I would not have any size unless 26s started to confirm and look like a breakout. So I always keep these types of charts on watch when they have 10, 20 million of volume, because we can have a trade surrounding that for the next usually 2 or 3 days. And it's a pretty good probability style trade to be a reactive trade to whatever happens, or join the trend after 9:45, 10 a.m. UNIT, staying familiar, potential still big unwind. Sometimes these things come in and then they just never look back, and they sink 50 cents, 50 cents, 50 cents. So I'd love to join that. Med came back. This is, again, another example like MTCH, gap down on earnings and then steady bid back up. Nothing I'm too excited about. I want to stay familiar with it because it has massive range and good volume considering what it typically trades. Qualcomm, same thing, and rapid fire for me on these just because they're reactive trades. They're nothing that I am gonna sit here and make a plan for tonight because we got to see if it gaps up tomorrow. We got to see how they react. If anybody comes out with Qualcomm with 120 target, 150 target, things may change. So these I always want to see in the morning and then make a plan from there pre-market. But it's on watch obviously because of the volume and the range, and there's a good chance that at some point it's going to want to come back under 90s. But for now, let it go to 100. Jack, staying familiar, so far so good. The goal has been to kind of join any morning strength for a fade versus VWAP, and you can kind of see it, let it kind of do its thing. A little bit of a choppy style of trade. You can't really size into something like this unless the volume started to really pick up, but lower the better, and eventually we might have some type of rebound. The goal for the first day that I had it on scan after earnings was towards 68 potentially, and then on Thursday, lower the better towards 58 to 60. Couple other ones just to kind of keep an eye on. RUHN has got my eye. This one had a lockup, and they faded it off. You can see that we're in a area of consolidation and resistance. We're testing that level. Same thing over here. But this one just kind of has that action that makes me curious. Just like SES, things like that where ramps up, sits back, ramps up, sits back. Those random blocks, the buyers, sellers come in, and then it pops back up on air. So I feel like they are churning people through through this name daily. If you're chasing, they'll wait for you to sell back out, then they buy you back, and they're just trying, I think, to cut down whoever has some size, and before they ultimately do a move here. So the key levels for me, 750 or 8, and this is one of those types that could do crazy. So again, that doesn't mean I'm ultra bullish. I would be bullish if it started to base at 750 and base at 8, and then 850 probably that trigger level. I guess over this level over here. But the key is to not have FOMO. You see it ramping up. Oh crap! I forgot. I wanted to be in this, and you buy 740, and then all of a sudden it's 690. That happened the first day, right? So be patient. Keep an eye on it. Set your targets. Set your price alerts. And I definitely like the way that what's happening. So you can assume that this will fail for now, but if it proves otherwise, I am 100% keeping this thing on radar, and based on what we've seen the last couple days, definitely makes me interested. EXPE, have to keep it on watch. Probably have a $5 to $7 type move. Nice and clean action on Friday. Lower opens for a rally back is ideal, but looking for 9:45, 10 a.m. trend joins. There's a good chance I don't trade it because I'll be looking for cleaner trends, but I still want to be familiar with it. And over DTIL, last but not least, PTON. Nice rally back. I still have a position here, but at this point, I'll be trading dips versus 23. And if dips versus 23 start to hold, then I will look for the breakout from there. And again, there's still a pretty heavily short position here. So that's it for me for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of the Sunday. Again, leave a comment below As I said, we'll pick somebody for either Momo Traders book or IU chat for a month. And all you got to do is just kind of write your biggest takeaway, because like I said, I don't know what kind of is those aha moments for a lot of new traders. And sometimes when I say things, I don't really think about it because it's just second nature. But if there is something that sticks, I want to be able to kind of expand on that next time. So, all right, that's it, guys.